Mind, I'm Paul John Dykes. It's half time here at Celtic Park and it's Celtic 0, Hearts 1. I'm joined by Chris McElwain and Sean Connolly to run through the first 45 minutes of Wilfried Nancy's tenure at Celtic. And it was looking good, Sean, throughout most of that half. Good control, build-up play by Celtic, no end product, of course. High tempo, one-touch football, playing our way out of trouble at the back. And then Hearts score near the death. First shot on target. It's 1-0 Hearts. Poor goal to lose by Celtic's defensive angle. I mean, you look at every player with a hand up screaming for offside. It was absolutely not offside. And they score at the death. Very, very disappointing at that stage of the game, wasn't it?
Yeah. I agree with what you're saying in particular to the goal, regards to the goal. I disagree slightly about it looking good before that, to be honest. I agree with your point about the one touch and the fast pace and the intensity. That's all been very positive. Good intensity, good intentionality, fast movement. And we've had Nancy on the side, encouraging that and giving feedback to such effect. New system, though, the players don't really look like they know what they're doing. It's quite disjointed in that sense. You can see it from very early on in the first few minutes. Players don't know who's supposed to be taking a throw in. The movement is players are looking a bit lost at times. So there's and that's not really, it shouldn't really be a surprise when Nancy arrives on Thursday morning and we've got a game on a Sunday. So he's had maximum 3 days of training in order to try and instill a entirely new system. And so we do feel that we are really relying on the intensity and the intentionality because the tactics are certainly not bedded in any way at the moment. The goal, in specific regard to the goal, yes, it was very immature, switching off, not very professional. So that's you can certainly, and there's no one individual even to blame for there. There's about 3 or 4 players that make fatal mistakes there that do lead to that goal. So it's a mixed bag so far. But honestly, on balance, I'd struggle to call it good overall. But there's been good aspects and some poor aspects.
Before the game, Chris, we were all of the view that, this is a new era. There's a new approach. It's bold. Sean and I were talking about this 4 in the middle. I thought it might have been a diamond. Sean said a square. It looks more like a square to me. 2 pivots, 2 number 10s.
Yep.
Is it working for you? Because I did see what I would have described as kind of free-flowing football up to a point with no end product. That's important. No end product. If we then start filtering out players who aren't playing too well, I don't think Tuneki's had a great game down the left wing. I think Yang has shown that he's definitely bulked up a bit. He's stronger, a wee bit more aggressive, doing a wee bit more in the defensive areas that I hadn't seen from him before. So I'm not criticising him on the right. But Sean has been less impressed in the first half. What about yourself? Where are you in that argument?
Possibly somewhere in the middle, which will be a surprise to nobody. But I agree with Sean's point. I think there was a lot of good stuff that I saw in the first half. So I'm not having a knee-jerk reaction about the goal. The goal's a classic sucker punch, and it's a product of the fact that we've been so wasteful with our final ball. I wouldn't even say wasteful in front of goal, but it's actually the final ball and the build-up. What I've liked for the majority of that first half up until we lost the goal, I thought we were playing pretty well defensively. I actually liked some of the defensive work that had been done by players like Tenekte and Engels, for example. I thought Nygren was a decent pivot point for coming out from defence into attack. The one element that was shown up as part of that, I think, was Nygren's lack of pace. He was quite easily caught and didn't get the chance to advance as far up the pitch as we possibly needed. The same 2 players I've mentioned, Tenekte and Engels, I think have also been particularly guilty of having a very poor final ball. I think that they're not alone. I think Nygren maybe the same there. Maeda has to do slightly better with the 2 early chances he has. I think they were good openings, but outside of those two openings, we've not really been in a position to threaten their goal. We've had a lot of play down the left. I think Tenekte's maybe lack of end product is being highlighted. I think that's fair. I think down the other side, Yang shown good fight, good energy. But again, I can only recall one real cross that I saw him put in, and I think we need far more in that regard. But I think that overall, I view it slightly differently to Sean. I think the problems we're seeing is not down to the system. I think the problems we're seeing is down to a lack of quality and a lack of ability, and it really does come down to the lack of the final ball. The goal we lose is individual errors. 100% agree with that. I think it's poor. I think there's a comment that came up that said play to the whistle. 100% agree. I hate to see players stick their hands up and wait for a decision. You don't do that. You wait for the decision to come. You play on until it happens. You know, you have to stay disciplined and stay on top of the match. So individually, that was poor, but I'm not that worried. I don't feel as though the system is not working. I just think we don't necessarily have the players to execute the final piece of the puzzle, which is the final ball in and around the box.
If you go back to the defensive change then, and you're playing Trusty wider right than he would be in the middle two, is that working? Because I look at that and I think, you know, actually in terms of risk, that is quite why change a system when you don't have the players to play the system, is my point, Chris. We really don't have that strong, dominant, right-sided centre half, you know, because Carter Vickers is obviously injured. Dane Murray's come in. It's not really worked out so far for him. The backup who had come in and Simpson Pusey's disappeared from view. So we're playing Trusty there and we're sticking to a system over the personnel. Has that been an error? Do you think that's been a weak point for Celtic? Hearts are happy for Trusty to have the ball because he's on his weak side. He's probably had more of the ball than anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I get Sean's opinion on this as well, but I've heard the commentator talking a lot about the fact that Hearts are allowing Trusty to have the ball. I've not really seen that as a huge issue because, again, I think up until we lost the goal, they weren't really pressing Trusty, so I didn't see that as a weakness defensively. Dan playing out, I mean, he's playing out, you know, fairly simple, straightforward passes. I didn't see a huge amount wrong in Trusty's performance in that first half. So no, I wouldn't necessarily subscribe to the view that that's a weakness. Certainly not a weakness that I think's been exploited to any great effect by Hearts today. If
you're playing, Sean, I'll throw it to you. If you're playing this fast, I think it's been a fast tempo in the first half, and the ball's coming to your weaker right foot, then the move itself isn't going to be as high tempo if you're not playing it first time. This is, I think, the point is he's turning back, he's playing it back, he's playing it sideways rather than forwards. I mean, and I'm always a great believer in you play to the strengths of the players you've got. Do you think it's an issue? Chris doesn't seem to. I think it's maybe been something of an issue. We're not going to change it at half time because up until the goal, I think, you know, largely it's been working.
Oh, look, if you're talking about offensively speaking, it's an issue. Defensively, he's been fine. I think he's done a good job defensively. The Hearts have had nothing down there. I think part of the reason he's getting so much of the ball is maybe it's that they've identified he's out of position, and I think a lot of it is also just down to the fact that they're very much man marking the midfield. So they're kind of letting Tierney and Trusty loose a little bit. That's the Maeda, but the big Maeda chance does come from when Tierney gets loose out there. Good. And Trusty is, I guess, the square peg in a round hole over there on that side. So he's afforded a bit more latitude than anyone else. I don't think it's systemic, but yes, I agree that Trusty not quite suited in possession on that side. But defensively, I think he has done well. Sorry.
I take the point from Jay Walker Boy because I do agree that a lot is made of, you know, that's your weak position. Carl Starfelt played his entire Celtic career out of position, if you want to look at it like that. But I think when you're playing with the three at the back, the tendency for you to get the ball a wee bit wider right, Chris, and then, you know, then the onus is on you to play sometimes a searching pass with your weaker foot is the issue. But I agree with Jay Walker Boy in a sense. Play Colby Dovitt. Sean mentioned this before the game. There's two right backs on the bench, obviously for a reason. They're pro footballers, for crying out loud. I do think you should be able to switch personally. But I tell you something, if you're very, very strong on your left-hand side and you're asked to play wide right and Trusty's getting a lot of the ball wider right, that can be an issue, especially when in an offensive sense, Chris.
Yeah, I think you're right in an offensive sense. What I'd be looking for there is I'd be looking for one of the two deep line midfielders like Callum McGregor or Arnie Engels to come back and take the responsibility out of Trusty's hands. Trusty gets the ball, just shift it to one of them quickly. Doesn't matter if you've got a weak.
They've been man marked.
Well, yeah, then look for an alternative option. They've been man marked. Then two of the Hearts players are tied up, so play wide. What I'm saying is I'm looking for another player then to try and alleviate some of that responsibility. What I did notice towards the end of that half, though, is that Trusty took the ball and actually carried it forward, and it led to a reasonably decent opening for us. So maybe actually, if Hearts are backing off Trusty, allow Trusty then to bring the ball forward. Actually give him the time to shift it onto his left foot. If Hearts players are tied up, then use it. I wouldn't put the failure of us scoring or the loss of the goal down to the Trusty position. I just think that was individual errors. I think had we not lost that goal, I think we'd have been come on extolling the quick play, bemoaning the lack of final ball, but I don't think we would necessarily be focusing too much on Trusty. That's my personal opinion.
I'm not blaming the position on the goal that we've conceded. Yeah. The other area of the park that I don't think has been that effective has been the two 10s, Hatate and Nygren. 10. If you're playing 10, you've got to create chances. And I don't think for having those two guys who are creative players, Sean, on the park, that they've created enough for me.
They're putting balls into the box to no one. They're hitting. There's in the play. And to be fair as well, the players in the box don't seem to know where the ball may or may not be going. So that kind of speaks to the point I made earlier about the disjointed nature of it. Like if you are playing, it's not like Hearts are playing a low block, but they are defending well in the box. So when we are getting in and around, there's a hesitancy. You need to be decisive and clinical, and there's poor decisions being made, poor execution, and there's a lack of quality in that sense as well. So I don't know, maybe we need Iheanacho in there. Maybe Maeda needs to go out in the right, because we've talked a lot about Trusty, but his two out balls are supposed to be Nygren and Yang. He's finding Nygren, and Nygren's coming inside, but Yang is not really offering much of an out ball there, to be honest.
I think you've given a good sense of a change that could be made here, Sean, because Yang's performances and his form was picking up under O'Neill, but that was on the left. Maeda's not had a great night day today, it looks like, night. So push him out wide right, and Iheanacho, a guy we mentioned before the game, Chris, could obviously go through the middle. Can you see any changes at half-time? We'll find out soon enough, but do you reckon there will be changes by Nancy?
Well, he's shown himself to be bold, so I wouldn't be necessarily too surprised. I think the change that Sean's mentioned is probably a good one. Yang, again, not really going to denigrate his performance too much today. I think he's shown a decent amount of fight, but I think he is better on the left, which has been evident in the last few games. So possibly putting Maeda out there, utilising his pace, and we know Maeda's pretty good on the defensive side as well. And then you've got what you probably consider a slightly more natural striker in Iheanacho coming on. I also, one element I'd pick up on, I mentioned it earlier, I do think that Nygren's lack of pace has been shown up a little bit in the system so far. I found that he's been caught quite quickly. He was getting closed down very quick. Now, the advantage Nygren's got is he's very, very good. He's got good ability with his feet, so he can shift the ball quickly. But he doesn't have that, I think, that ability to get past players and really travel with the ball further up the park. And I'm wondering maybe if that's, as we mentioned in the pre-match, could you see maybe an opportunity for a Balakwisha to come in and maybe, have a little bit more momentum or movement around there? Difficult to say because I've not really seen enough of Balakwisha, but, just someone that can kind of travel with the ball and move it from kind of middle to front.
You just called him Balakwisha. You did, just one of these slips of the tongue. Obviously, we have sat here many, many times on match day, guys, and it's just that the sense of emotion that people get carried away, and it's almost like you think doom and gloom, etc. We have seen completely different performances in the second half. What's your take, Sean, going into the second half? There has been a bit of a disjointed nature, I would say, with regards to the shape. Players obviously learning on the job, if you like. They're about to come back onto the park. I'm just going to see if there's been any change in personnel. I can't see anyone else coming off the bench. It looks as though it's the same starting 11 taking the field for the second half. In relation to the second half then, Sean, do you think changes have to be made? Because it doesn't look as though we're going to create anything in that first half with all the possession that we had.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. And maybe Iheanacho was a fulcrum. Maybe Luke McCowan comes in and offers a bit more wide right. We mentioned pre-match, Nygren is not particularly suited to that position. Hatate has been the least effective. We've seen him in weeks, so it could be that he comes out for Bernardo. there's lots of potential changes there. It might be that we rebalance the right hand side with Ralston or Donovan, and Trusty shifts in because Scales has not looked too hot in that sense. There's a lot of players looking very uncomfortable out there, and not a lot. Sorry, there are a few players looking very uncomfortable out there, and it could be that we see a bit of testing the waters, if nothing, not just to do with freshening up, but testing out different players in different positions and seeing how it works.
Well, Hearts are now on the park, so let's go to the second half, and hopefully at full time we can talk about a comeback and a Celtic victory. Thanks everybody for getting involved, and thank you once again, Chris McAway and Sean Connolly, for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.